Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the whole front line, where in this one there's a lot of activity as Russian forces are increasing their attacks both in the Avdiivka sector as well as in Bakhmut and in the Crimea front. So starting out in the south, the Russian forces continue their attacks here to the south of Vuhledar, as they attempt to gain further control over the dacha areas as well as close in on the coal mine here to the east of the city. So far we are seeing the Russian forces attempting to recapture the southern dacha area, which they have recaptured, and now they're looking to attack further in one of these directions or simply do some active defense. I'm not exactly 100% sure. Then we move on to the Donetsk front, where here the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Novomikhailivka, as well as Pobjeda, and in Marinka in the city center, as well as to the north of the city. Here the Russian forces are attempting to expand the zone of control and gain control over Marinka after months of fighting. Then we move on to the Donetsk front itself, where the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Nevelsky as well as in Pervomaiske, both in the center and to the north of the city in the direction of the northern areas by Vodiane. Then we see in the Avdiivka front, here fighting continues in the direction of Severne, as well as in the direction of Avdiivka from Opitne, in the east in the direction of Kamyanka, to the northwest in the direction of Stepove and Berdishi, and finally further north in the direction of Novobakhmutivka as well as Novokalinove. So in this area, we see Russian forces expanding their attacks into the direction of Novobakhmutivka as well as Novokalinove to make sure that they gain control over the intersection here to prevent reinforcements from the northern side unless they go through the fields. And at the same time, they're advancing further westwards to gain full control over the rail lines, as well as advance in the direction of Berdishi and Stepove to connect with the southern flank, which is attacking the direction of Severne. And they're also attacking in the direction of Avdiivka to keep the Ukrainian soldiers in this part of the city. Then we move on to the Bakhmut front, where the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Ivanivske, as well as to the west and east of it. There's also reports by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense that the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Predeshina, so most likely they're fighting over the control over the west of the canal. Then at the same time, we see fighting here to the south of the city, where if we look at the recap map, we see the Russian forces managed to capture the southwestern part of the city, where they've managed to advance here by these residential areas, these high-rise buildings, apartment complexes, and in this northern residential area by the industrial faculty. So essentially the Russian forces are now fighting the Ukrainians by this university area, here by the southwest of the city. Then we move to the north of the city, where here the Russian forces are attacking the some steel plant, and they're also attempting to gain control over this area here to the north. There's also fighting here to the east of the Assam steel plant as the open field is being fought over to the west of the Bakhmutovka river. Then to the west of the city, we also see fighting by Khomove as well as Bohdanivka. Here the Russian forces are attempting to gain control over these parts of the road, as well as advance by the rail lines, which will allow them to reach the canal here to the west of the city. To the northwest of Bakhmut, we see fighting in the direction of Hriorivka, as well as Orihovo-Vasilivka, to the south of the village, to the north by the E40 highway, and by Selizhnyansk. So what is very interesting is here the topography indicates that the positions of Hriorivka and Bohdanivka are in lower positions, while this area between the two is a high-rise area, and to the north of Orihovo-Vasilivka also, and to the west of Canal as well. So essentially taking this part is insignificant for the Russian forces, as it doesn't really give them any advantageous positions, as this part here is on the low ground. The villages themselves will allow the Russian forces to gain control over the canal line. So in congregation, these are all combined technically significant, but by themselves they are insignificant. So the Russian forces needs to take control over these three villages, Minkivka, Holubivka, and Privilya, to gain proper control over the canal line, and then they will have to advance northwards by the E40 highway to cut off the bridge across. Here, if we look at the topographic map, we can see here, this is the part between Orehovo-Vasilivka and Hurhorivka. So this western part is actually on the high ground. Everything to the east of the canal is actually on the high ground. So the Russian forces just need to gain control over the east of the canal, and they will have a very strong defensive positions to any possible Ukrainian counterattacks in the area. We can see here that the only part that isn't significantly above ground is this part here to the southwest of Bohdanivka. And you can see here between Hryhorivka and Bohdanivka, the high ground area here is very strong for the Ukrainian forces, as they also control Chasiv Yar, which will allow them to heavily fortify it and heavily bombard it in case of a Russian control over the area. So in any case, any steadfast control over the canal line by the Russian forces would need for the Russians to actually take control over Chasiv Yar. So Chasiv Yar is a very significant city for the Russian forces to take in case they want to ever hold back any Ukrainian offensive in this area. And then in the southern parts, the Russian forces also need to take control of Hormove and advance by the center straight towards Chasiv Yar to gain proper control over the area here to the south of Bohdanivka, and it will allow them to advance towards this high rise on the east of the canal from two directions, from the north and the south, and straight ahead from a third direction. Then we move on to the Siversk front, where here fighting continues to the northwest of Berestove, as well as in the Verkhovno-Kamyansk area, where here the Russian forces managed to advance a bit further as well, as they managed to capture these parts west of where they previously captured, as well as the parts that the Ukrainian forces captured over a month ago. So this allows them to advance further towards Verkhovno-Kamyansk from the northern section. Fighting also continues in the direction of Belorivka. As for the forest areas, Serbriansky forest area, the Russian forces continue fighting both to the east and to the north of it. And to the west of Kremen, we see here the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Torske-Yampolivka area, as they are attempting to gain control over the river line, and now they have advanced further to gain closer towards it and attack the villages head-on. Fighting also continues here to the west of Chernypopivka and to the southwest of Ploshenka, as well as to the northern direction of Makivka. So the reason I haven't added this to the recap map here is because the Syriac maps reported Ukrainians captured this part over a month ago. But since then, Deep State Map has edited the map to showcase that this is all under Russian control. So I'm waiting for a confirmation by either side that this is like actually under Russian control before I add it to the recap map. However, the map looks like this for now. And then finally, fighting also continues in the direction of Novoselivsk, here to the west of Kazimivka. And that is all for this update. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and see you all next time.